All right, good morning, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and get into the September 11th Day of Service Technical Assistance call. So just as a quick reminder, today's webinar is recorded. The slides are available up on the project website where the application is. There's a technical assistance tab in there that you can click to, and that's where the recording for today's webinar will be. So this is just an overview of what we're going to cover today. We're going to just walk through basically the application and talk about some service project ideas, the notice of federal funding, timeline selection, eligibility, and kind of walk through the two application structures, as well as a little bit about the budget and performance measures. We will take questions at the end, but if you do have questions throughout, please feel free to use the Q&A or the chat feature, and I will do my best to answer them, but certainly I will answer them at the end, and then I'll also prepare a kind of an FAQ document that we'll put up on the project website, so that way you have that available in writing somewhere. So the purpose of this day of service grant opportunity is to mobilize college students to engage in service activities that meet vital community needs and honor the sacrifices of those who lost their lives on September 11 or who rose in service as a result of that tragedy. Awarded September 11 Day of Service and Remembrance service projects must benefit student veterans or community veterans and also their families. So it can be student veterans, it can be community veterans, or it can be family members of veterans. Kind of one of those three, or all three if you would like. Here's just a couple of service project ideas if you're a campus that's interested in this opportunity, but you're not quite sure what to do on the service project side of things. So for student veterans, you could help to host a resume writing workshop. You could create care packages for community veterans and their families. You could host a science education event for veterans and their families. You could host a free meal. You could help out with landscaping, handiwork at a local vet service organization. Those are just some ideas. Obviously, you can focus on what needs to happen in your local community and what your campus is best able to do in order to serve this target population. So for some resources for our MLK Day of Service grant opportunity that we had this previous year, Campus Compact in Mountain West, they hosted a webinar all about ways that institutions of higher education can support veterans and student veterans, and there's a link to the recording right there. And then there's also a link to a toolkit here that has some additional ideas. So if you want to, you can access, again, these slides will be available on the project website, or they already are available on the project website, and you can check them out there. You'll also receive an email with this information as well. And just a brief note for your service project as it relates to grant funding. Iowa Campus Compact will award funding for supporting service projects. So if you need support, funding support for your day of service project, certainly you can request that as part of your grant budget. Or you can also request grant funding for reflection events, workshops, volunteer recognition opportunities, among other things that honor the sacrifice of those who lost their lives on September 11th or those who rose in service as a result of that tragedy. It can be either or both, but your project, your proposal, you must have a day of service project. And that's really what the initial application, which we'll talk a little bit more about here in a little bit, that's really what that one is focused on. This is just a brief notice of federal funding. Funding for this opportunity comes from the Corporation of National Community Service. The catalog of federal domestic assistance number, you can see right there, and you can see the original NOFO information. So if you are working with your grants office on this opportunity, there's that information. A brief overview of the timeline through the initial application. The application is already open. Today we have our recorded technical assistance webinar. And then the review of the initial application, the deadline for that is June 9, 2007. And again, here's the link to the the application for that. A notice of invitation to complete the final application, so to move on to the next step, will happen the week of Monday, June 19th, 2017. I'm hopeful that we can get our notices out on that Monday, but again, we're holding the deadline to that week, but again, we will make every effort to get those notices out as quickly as possible. So selection for the initial application. How are we going to decide who moves from the initial to the final application? Well, we're going to select applications that demonstrate the ability to benefit veterans and their families, and we're also going to select applications that connect civic learning strategies with the goals of the service project. So again, that might including reflection, recruiting relevant service learning courses to participate in the project, provide training or facilitate discussion for service participants on veterans issues, or other approaches that you think work on your campus or that you have experience with. You know, what's going to work on your campus is really what we want to see, and that's really what's important here. We're also going to pay special consideration to selecting applications from across all U.S. states and territories. Also projects that leverage AmeriCorps member support, and from varying types and sizes of institution of higher education, and you'll see those questions in the pre-application. Eligibility, so who is eligible to apply for these grants? Applications must come from an institution of higher education. So community partners and nonprofits that partner with higher education, unfortunately, are not eligible for this opportunity. You can request that you can work with an institution of higher education to leverage these grant dollars. Also, individuals requesting grant funding will not be considered. So it really is the institution that we're going to be giving the funding to. Only one subrecipient per institution, and if more than one application is submitted per institution, then only the first received application will be considered. So if you're a larger campus, it might be within your interest to kind of ask around and see if other departments or student groups or whatever, whoever you're kind of working with are interested in applying with this, to kind of see if they are interested in doing that, and then to see if you can put an application together and to partner across your campus. The third thing here, projects which propose a subrecipient model will not be considered. So we're not going to fund you so that way you can fund 2 or 3 other projects. So keep that in mind. Institutions of higher education acting as subrecipients must have current and sustained membership through the project period with National Campus Compact and or State Campus Compact affiliate. So that can, it can be with one of our state affiliates here in Iowa, obviously Iowa Campus Compact, but then if you're not part of a state campus compact, you can also be just a National Campus Compact member. Number 5, applicants cannot be for-profit organizations or nonprofits whose sole purpose is to engage in lobbying. I think by this point we probably aren't a part of that one. But and then lastly, subrecipients and their projects must be located in the United States. And I think a key thing here in that number 6, for projects out there, the place where your service project is located and the institution of higher education don't have to be the same place. They can be 2 different locations. That's certainly okay, but they just have to be within the United States. So just briefly, the outline of the initial application. We're going to talk about Campus Compact affiliation, application information, institution information, national service, and narrative. These are kind of the big sections of the initial application, and we'll just walk through them, and I'll give you some pointers throughout. So the Campus Compact affiliation. So here's a link to a list that National Campus Compact provides of member institutions of Campus Compact. So you can go and look on that list for if your institution is a member of National or State Campus Compact. You can take a look at that. That's the list that we will be using to verify and determine that your institution is a member of Campus Compact. If for some reason you're not on that list, then that's okay. You're not on on that list and you are a member of Campus Compact, just communicate with us. There's my email address. We just want some proof of membership, and really that's up to you to decide on what that proof of membership looks like. You can ask for an email from the state or national office, copy of a paid invoice, or other sort of documentation. If you have questions about that, please feel free to contact me and we can work out those issues on a one-on-one basis. The next section is the applicant information. It's critical that this application is not completed by an AmeriCorps member. However, AmeriCorps members can certainly support your project. They can help to coordinate it, but they cannot be the applicant on this grant application because it is a federal grant opportunity. And that is something that is explicitly prohibited by the Corporation for National and Community Service. So please keep that in mind if you are leveraging AmeriCorps members to support your opportunity. You just need to find a staff member on your campus in order for them to be the applicant. The institution information, we're going to ask obviously those things like the name of your institution, address, etc. We are required to collect your institutional DUNS, the Dun and Bradstreet Data Universal Numbering System. That's something that we're required to do as what the federal government will call a pass-through entity. Obtaining a DUNS number is free, so you don't have to, if you don't know what your institution's is, there's a link right here and you can follow that link and look for your institution's DUNS. That's something that we're required to report. So keep that in mind if you have questions about that specific question in the institutional information. The next section, national service. This is where you just indicate what programs, types of programs you'll be receiving support from. So you can select AmeriCorps Vista, AmeriCorps State. I think Senior Corps is an option. Once you select an option, another question is going to appear that's going to ask you to indicate approximately how many members from that program will be supporting your project. Again, that's an approximate. Perhaps at this point you don't even have a definitive ideas, which is perfectly normal and to be expected, but we're just asking for an estimate. And then there's the narrative section. There's just the two questions that we're asking. This is the initial application, so hopefully it's pretty quick. How will your September 11 Day of Service project benefit veterans? And then also, what will your service participants learn from your September 11 service project? How will they learn it? There is a 3,000 character limit. One thing I'll also say is that the form stack form, the application process we're using at this point, does not allow the applicant to save your application. So we suggest that you write up your narrative using some sort of word processing software, a Google Doc or a Word document or something like that, and write it, edit it, and then submit it in the application form. And then I want to just talk about what is kind of a competitive application. What does that look like? Certainly I talked about the selection, what we're looking for in the selection, but on the competitive application side, especially in this narrative, we feel that those applications will clearly identify the target veterans group, whether it's a student, community, families, other sort of veterans associated group. You'll clearly identify that in the narrative. You also concisely describe how the veterans will benefit from the service project, whether it is receiving that care package or having that education day, whatever that might be. And then lastly, describe how the project will incorporate civic learning strategies, whether it's through reflection or recruiting service learning courses to attend the service project or some sort of other civic learning strategy. Then just a note about the final application, just as a reminder, selected applicants will be invited to complete the final application during the week of June 19th, 2017. And again, that's our hope is to get those notices out as quickly as possible. And just briefly, including in that final application, we're going to ask you a little bit more information about your service project, who the project contact information is. So if you're awarded, who would we be working with, some performance measure goals, and then lastly, a budget and budget narrative. We will provide a technical assistance call, additional technical assistance call, and additional application instructions will be provided to all institutions who are invited to move on to the final application. So you will receive additional support, and you certainly can call me and ask me or send me an email if you have questions about the application and the final application phase, as well as the initial application phase. Just a note about the budget and match requirements. Grant recipients are required to match grant funds equal to 30% of the requested project budget for their September 11th National Day of Service. And grant awards have to be at least $1,000. So as you're thinking about the project that you're putting together, it has to be at least $1,000 that you're requesting. The match can be cash. It can also be in kind. So however that looks like. And then I have just some example match calculations here. So if Iowa Campus Compact, if you're requesting $1,500 from us, we would expect you to match that with at least $643. And unlike our previous MLK Day of Service, so if you're on the call here and you're familiar with our MLK Day grant application process, this one we just have a minimum match requirement, and that's all that we have for this one. There isn't like a weighting in the application process or anything like that. That's not part of our consideration this year. So if you're putting together a budget for if you're in the final phase and you're putting together a budget for it, I would shoot for that 30% and not really go above that. It doesn't really advantage you in any way. So just keep that in mind. And then I wanted to talk about some of the prohibited, allowable, unallowable sorts of things. You should pay special consideration to these following lists. These are available in the initial application instructions, so that we have an idea of these things up front during this process. There's a whole list of prohibited activities that funding cannot go towards. Two that I'm just going to call it real quick are the attempts to influence legislation, and then also voter registration drives. So if you wanted to do a September 11 voter registration drive and you want to use grant funding for that, this is not the opportunity for that. Certainly you can do a voter registration drive on campus. You can work with a different funder for that, but the funding for this cannot be used for those sorts of things. Some allowable costs, these are the kind of broad categories: supplies, contractual and consultant services. So if you want to bring in a trainer or a speaker or facilitator to campus, that would be a great way to use some of these fundings. Going back to supplies, that can support your day of service project if you needed some supply funding for that. If you wanted to do training, so if you needed training for your staff, students, veterans, what have you, in order to facilitate the day of service project or some other sort of element, that certainly would be an allowable cost. And then other forms of using grant funding could be travel in order to move volunteers to service locations, printing costs if you need those, public service advertisements. That's a great way to meet that match requirement, and then recognition events, volunteer recognition events, especially in those would be allowable. Some unallowable costs would be personnel and student, staff, and faculty stipends, so no personnel costs. Indirect, so if you have a federal indirect rate, you cannot use that for this grant opportunity. And then obviously entertainment and alcohol. Performance measures and reporting, just to talk about this a little bit, kind of to give you an idea of the expectation for the reporting for this grant opportunity. We will provide technical assistance webinars on all the reports that will be provided. So if you're funded, there will be written instructions, as well as recorded webinars or webinars that you can attend and ask questions about each of these reports. The three reports are the snapshot report that's due within 24 hours of the service project date. So you provide us with the date that your project is going to happen, or when the majority of your project is going to happen. And there's a report that's due within 24 hours of that. And this is just a quick report that's sent directly to CNCS that highlights your project's accomplishments. The next report, the final report, this is really your kind of program report, where you give us the numeric reporting about all of your, the number of recruited volunteers, and some other information that's all included in the application instructions if you want to see that in detail. We also ask you for your performance measure results, and then narratives, which are just asking you questions about challenges, project performance, stories, learning, and again, you can see what those narrative questions are in the application instructions. And then the last report is your financial claims. This is where you're giving us that invoice and all the supporting documentation for all of your reimbursed costs. All right, so we made it to the question section of the webinar today, the technical assistance call. So if you do have questions, feel free to submit them in either the Q&A or the chat box feature, and I will be happy to answer them. I'll put together an FAQ document that'll be available on the project website. If you want to talk more specifically about your specific idea or your project, please feel free to contact me directly. You have my email and my phone number right there, and I'm more than happy to talk to you about your project and see if it's something that works well for this grant opportunity. So if you do have questions, feel free to submit them. Let's see, we have a one question here. Are there specific examples of in-kind matching that are not allowed? For instance, if we have foundation funds that will be used towards the match or the service fee that is normally charged for renting a space. In that specific case, that would be an allowable source of in-kind match, allowable source of match, so long as obviously the space that you're renting is associated with your project or whatever's going along with your day of service project, or if you have like a reflection opportunity or something like that, that would certainly be allowed. In terms of what's allowed and unallowed, I would tell you just to go look at the application instructions, and you can take a look at the entire list of unallowed and allowable funding on there. If you feel like you have another kind of specific question about a specific situation like that, please feel free to send me an email or give me a call. And then also when we're going through the, if you move forward to the final application phase, we'll do a compliance review of the budget just to make sure that everything works out. You're welcome. All right, well, I'm not seeing any other questions. You are all certainly welcome to send your questions in via email, or feel free to give me a phone call. That works too. And I will certainly send out a recording of today's webinar to everyone. But here is just again, the recording and the slides will be available on the program webpage, and here's the link to that. So thank you, everyone, and I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'm going to stop recording.